Oscar Piastri's biggest failure this season hasn't been on the racetrack. It's been at the strategy table. McLaren set out to prove that it could manage two equal drivers at the top of Formula One, and in the process, it's created a problem of its own making. Lando Norris found rhythm through clarity. Piastri, by contrast, is still searching for a map. The last four races have exposed a structural confusion inside Woking's orange walls. Same car, same tools, but opposite trajectories. In Mexico, Piastri experimented, altering his driving approach to suit a car that suddenly refused to respond to everything that had made it fast before. It wasn't resignation, it was resistance, a refusal to stay static when the championship fight was evolving around him. Jacques Villeneuve called it the sign of a driver already at his limit. But McLaren's own Andrea Stella viewed it as the opposite. "Oscar learned a lot in Mexico," he said. "That's an investment for the final 4 rounds." Former Haas boss Guenther Steiner was less forgiving. If you don't know who the team supports, you lose your mojo. Maybe that's the heart of it. Piastri is learning inside a team still unsure who it really wants to win. And yet, every time Piastri looks lost, McLaren itself appears even more uncertain. Norris grows through direction. Piastri grows through confusion, and sometimes drivers forged in confusion come back sharper than the ones who had everything laid out for them. Before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell, because the story of Oscar Piastri isn't one of decline, but of recalibration, and where that leads could reshape this title fight completely. Piastri led the 2025 World Championship for 15 consecutive rounds, peaking with a 34-point advantage over Norris and more than 100 over Max Verstappen, after his Dutch Grand Prix win at Zandvoort. From April to August, he looked like Formula One's newest inevitable champion. 4 wins in 5 races, calm under pressure, the quiet killer who seemed immune to hype. But since the summer break, the script has reversed. 1 win, 1 podium, and 4 consecutive races off the rostrum. Norris's emphatic victory in Mexico gave him the championship lead by a single point, while Verstappen, once adrift, now sits just 35 behind. In a sport obsessed with trends, Piastri's dip has been interpreted as weakness. Villeneuve suggested it was complacency. Maybe that made Piastri complacent a bit. He told Sky Sports, "When all you have to fight is your teammate, maybe you don't push to that last tenth of a second." For Villeneuve, Norris's resurgence and Verstappen's charge merely exposed Piastri's ceiling. Lando is driving faster and better than he's been all season, and Piastri is not stepping up. He was already at his limit. But that's the easy narrative, the one that fits the numbers but misses the nuance. Because inside McLaren, the story sounds different. Piastri himself admitted he was struggling to understand why his usual driving style suddenly stopped working. "For the last couple of weekends, it's required a very different way of driving," he said in Mexico. "What worked well for me before has needed something very different, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around why." That honesty, rare in an era when drivers hide every weakness, reveals the reality of modern F1. With cars this sensitive, one small balance shift can flip the psychological dynamic. The MCL39, that once felt intuitive to Piastri, now demands inputs that favour Norris. The car hasn't changed dramatically, but the conditions have. Higher grip circuits, cooler tracks, subtle aerodynamic differences. What once rewarded Piastri's neat precision now punishes it. Andrea Stella recognised that complexity. "Even when it comes to Oscar, even if he lost some points to Verstappen, I think he's got a lot of learning from this weekend," he said. "That's an investment to make sure we are competitive in every condition in the final part of the season." This is Stella's McLaren. Methodical, long-term, allergic to panic. Yet it's also the same structure that may have unintentionally cornered its younger driver. Steiner's blunt observation that the Papaya Rules hurt his confidence carries an uncomfortable truth. The team's insistence on equal treatment has philosophical elegance but practical cost. Equality only works when the context is equal, and in a championship run-in, parity without clarity becomes a paradox. Earlier this season, when Piastri was unofficially the number 2 driver, he thrived, no pressure, no politics. Norris carried the team's weight, Piastri carried the momentum. But the moment the dynamic flipped, McLaren froze. It didn't know whether to back the experience or the form. The result is a driver trying to lead without being led. Even Villeneuve's criticism, stripped of provocation, hides a kind of compliment. It takes a composed driver to experiment mid-season, to alter style rather than blame setup. That willingness to unlearn is what separates fast drivers from future champions. Guenther Steiner, ever pragmatic, summed it up in his podcast appearance. At the beginning of the season, Oscar had no pressure. Lando was older, more experienced. Then with all the Papaya Rules, he lost a bit of confidence. You start in Mexico where he started, you haven't got a chance. He's right in part. Piastri's qualifying in Mexico, 8th on the timesheets, 7th after Sainz's penalty, left him too far back to influence the fight. But 5th, at the flag, just over a second behind Oliver Behrman, suggests the speed isn't gone. It's just hidden behind a wall of self-doubt and team ambiguity. While Piastri wrestled with that, Norris produced arguably the most complete weekend of his career. Pole by margin, win by half a minute, composure that even Verstappen acknowledged. The Britain's transformation hasn't come from sheer pace, it's come from self-awareness. Villeneuve called it his super strength. Owning your mistakes, even the ones that aren't yours, that's how you step up, he said. That's not weakness, that's progress. Johnny Herbert echoed that sentiment. He looks so relaxed. I haven't seen him like this. That's very powerful, Damon Hill agreed, hinting that Norris may have found new guidance, or a new version of himself. Something's happened. He's either had someone giving him advice, or he's found inspiration from within. All of which leaves McLaren in a delicate balance, 2 drivers evolving in opposite directions under one roof. And hovering behind them is Verstappen, quietly reconstructing Red Bull's threat. The RB21's late-season upgrades have reignited its competitiveness. Red Bull's persistence contrasts with McLaren's strategic restraint. Stella admitted that the team had switched off MCL 39 development early to avoid compromising its 2026 project. The 2026 car adds a lot of downforce every week, he explained. If we kept developing now, that project would be heavily compromised. It's a rational decision, but also a gamble, because while McLaren is building for the future, Verstappen is still racing in the present. And every DNF, every internal clash, every misread qualifying could swing the pendulum. Qualifying, in fact, has become the most decisive factor of this era. 14 of 20 Grands Prix this season have been won from pole, a 70% conversion rate, the highest in a decade. In a field this tight, track position is king. And yet, 3 of the final 4 venues, Brazil, Las Vegas, Qatar, promise chaos. Weather, cold graining, tyre degradation. None of them reward predictability. In that uncertainty lies Piastri's window. He doesn't need to dominate, he needs to disrupt. If McLaren's clean lines begin to blur again, the driver who already knows how to operate in the grey might just thrive. Stella, ever the engineer, still believes. It's not about mathematics, he said. It's about competitiveness. And we've proven we can win races, and in some conditions, dominate them. The subtext is clear. If both drivers rediscover confidence, McLaren can keep Verstappen at bay. But if is doing heavy lifting there. Because beneath the polite quotes and mutual respect, there's a psychological war running inside Woking. Norris now leads by 1 point and holds the momentum. Piastri is the one forced to adapt, to prove that learning mid-crisis is not weakness but evolution. For a 24-year-old in his second season, that's not a collapse. It's the education every champion needs before they become one. The danger for his rivals is that Piastri learns quickly. When a driver this composed realizes what's missing, the rebound tends to be precise and ruthless. The final act of 2025 begins in Brazil, a circuit that rarely rewards order. Interlagos has a habit of flipping narratives, of turning pressure into chaos. If the pattern holds, and if Piastri's experiments finally click, the same fans calling him off form today might be calling him resurgent by Sunday night. He's not finished, he's recalibrating. And a recalibrated Piastri, one who's learned to survive both the data and the doubt, is the kind of driver who can turn equality into advantage. The question is, when that moment comes, will McLaren recognise it in time, or will they misread the map again?